topics last and yesterday. Anybody come up with some different, besides Hirschsprung, this A-gang bionic megacolon, what were some of the other ways you could have a megacolon? What would be a cause of megacolon besides having it, this failure to colonize that particular portion of the GI tract and the neural crest cells? Anybody find out? Constipation, right? Severe constipation.
Back in the bronchial system.
Right? Chagas disease is another cause. Could be extreme malnutrition, drug use. There can be a lot of different things. So it's not just from this failure to colonize, but this is Hirschsprung's disease. That's a separate category for the medical.
So like by drug use, you mean things that slow down the gut, like Botox?
Yeah, I would guess that it would be, I'm not exactly sure, but they would have an irritation in the GI tract and cause problems for it to dilate and not be able to so. And again, with the megacolon, most often affects the rectal to mid-sigmoid area. Maybe 80% of the time it might extend all the way up into that ascending or descending and transverse colon area. It doesn't usually involve the right side. But those are pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at today's real quick because we got actually two of them. So we had part A and part B today.
Go back to the presentation.
Whoops, I did the wrong thing. I did this last time. Okay.
Oh, this is.
That surface might not be too great.
It's sitting on its own.
Put it on your knee, yeah.
This is the one you want, right?
And then,
We don't want to close it.
but make it big
Make it
again.
bigger
Yeah.
and- All right. Okay, so here we have kidney stones, ureteric calculi. Usually that's calcium oxalate, at least primarily. May be arrested at several sites along the length of the ureter. What are these sites? We'll see the radiograph next. And where is visceral pain from distension and obstruction referred? Okay, so where are these sites? Let's take a look at this next slide. They're showing us 4 different things. 3 of those are the sites, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we take a look here, and if you think it through, these stones are trying to make their way from the kidney to the bladder. So you can think of 3 different logical places where you might have trouble. So one would be right where we have the renal pelvis narrowing to form the ureter, right? So we have that, all of a sudden, this narrow tube coming from this nice big opening down to that narrow tube. So that's one of the places, of course. The other would be where we're actually crossing into the pelvic cavity, over the so-called pelvic brim. So this would be a place where we have potentially, an obstruction that could get lodged. And lastly, of course, when we finally enter into the bladder. So 3 logical locations.
What's the number 2?
What is the number 2? What does it look like? It's a bony structure. What is it? Can you see it?
Transverse processes.
Okay. So left transverse process of, probably L3, right? Looks like L1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so in this particular one, with the barium substance, you can see that there's an obstruction and it's going to be. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's go back here and take a look at it. Horseshoe kidney. So we've got a slide here, I think. Let's take a look.
The next thing was where the pain was going to be, right?
Oh, that's right. Let's go back and finish that. So where was the pain? So if we talk about this, where is the visceral pain from distension and obstruction referred to? So what's the innervation of the kidney and the ureters?
Greater spleen.
Okay, it's all sympathetic, right? Really.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got motor fibers, vasomotor really, and sensory fibers, pain, the job of sympathetics. And they're coming from what spinal cord levels?
Motor is from the muscles that are splanchnic.
Well, don't be so narrow in your thinking about it. Okay? It portion of it could be from lesser to least that are feeding into this whole network. But you have lumbar splanchnics as well. But the actual spinal cord levels of innervation then for the kidney is T10 to L1 and ureters T11 to L2. Okay, so if that's referred to the body wall, then where would that be?
With, like, pain and whatever side, like, wrapping around the front.
Yeah, so it's this so-called loin to groin kind of phenomena. Loin is just the flank area, so you get pain as this stone might progress along that urinary tract. You're going to have pain that's going to also progress along that dermatome, working its way from maybe the back area, the flank, down towards the inguinal area, and finally into the groin area, genital, scrotal area. So if we take a look at somewhere here we have, let me see, way down here. So we see here they've got where here? There, no, kidney. So in the back area here, working its way from the back around the side. Of course, it would make a difference if it's left or right side. But it's effective, working its way from the loin to the groin, and it would follow that dermatome then all the way from that T10 all the way down to the L2 area. Okay. So that finishes up that. Whoops. Horseshoe kidney. So let's take a look here. We've got a couple things that could go wrong with the development of the kidney, right? The kidneys actually develop in the pelvic cavity and then passively through growth ascend to end up in the resting place in the posterior abdominal wall area. So they've got to come up out of the pelvic cavity. And sometimes they can get stopped in their path. So we've got some vessels that usually are the culprit, the umbilical arteries, which are coming out of the pelvic area, kind of and heading towards the umbilical area. And so we've got kind of a fork, arterial fork kind of created, and these kidneys got to ascend up through that fork, and they could get stopped along the way. And if they get halted in that pelvic cavity, you have this so-called pelvic kidney, you can see over here, so an ectopic kidney where it's not in its normal resting site. They could also have the lower poles as they try to go through this arterial fork, kind of this narrowing, get pushed close enough together that they actually adhere to one another. And then that forms the so-called horseshoe kidney. Okay. And obviously then that's going to be impeded in its path upward, right? What's gonna stop it from going up all the way to its resting place, to its final?
Mesenteric, which is
Yeah, inferior mesenteric is going to be in the way, right on the midline there, so that would stop. Let's go back to this one now. Okay, where do patients complain of pain when the following organs are inflamed? So gallbladder.
Shoulder.
Well, why would it be in the shoulder? What would that be?
venous.
That would be diaphragm. Right? So that would be later. Right? That would be later. But what would be the early signs?
The subcostal.
Is it? It's T9 dermatitis.
Okay. What were the spinal cord levels? We talked about this before. Right?
T9.
This is again all sympathetic, pretty much. Although we talked about when you do a vagotomy, the adult bladder enlarges and is slower to empty, so there's something there. But anyway, sympathetics, vasomotor on the motor side, pain on the sensory side, and pain from what spinal cord levels? T6 to T9 is what the generals say. So it would be the dermatome, T6 to T9 on that right side. That would be early. Late now, very late, if it affected the diaphragmatic surface, would cause some problems then, where we have the C3, 4, and 5, right? Where else might it? Does it contact the anterior abdominal wall or the abdominal wall where we have parietal peritoneum? We talked about the fundic portion of the gallbladder. Tip of the ninth costal cartilage. So it would be very localized, right? The tip of the ninth costal cartilage there with the fundic portion contacts the anterior abdominal wall. What about appendicitis? We have an inflamed independence. So early on, where would the pain be? T10. T10. So that'd be where? Dermatome. Deferred pain. So that initial visceral pain, the body's misinterpreting that visceral pain as somatic pain. It's referred to the body wall essentially, so it thinks it's coming from around the umbilical area. And then as we get later, what happens?
It goes down into your inguinal.
Why? Why would it do that?
Because that's where it's located, and it irritates the parietal peritoneum at that
The
location.
parietal, which is innervated by general somatic afferent, right? So then we can localize that pain as somatic pain, and you really say, wow, it hurts right there. And it's not an indefinite kind of referred pain, it's actually definite pain firing off the general somatic afferent. Okay? What else? We have stomach. Stomach. Spinal cord levels?
T5 to T9.
Yeah, 6 to 9 or 5 to 9 is what we usually say. So here again, if we go back to that,
Oh, it's T6.
That's just the parietal peritoneum, right, that's getting inflamed, because the visceral doesn't have any
Yeah, it's not any
sense
innovation.
for you at all.
no, this is the organ itself is innervated by GVA from sympathetics for pain. And there's GVA for parasympathetics that are involved in some different things such as nausea, abdominal distress. So we're not talking about visceral or parietal layer. Visceral is essentially pain insensitive. We're talking about the organ itself. The stomach is hurting. It's inflamed. You're getting pain fibers firing off from the stomach. These are GVA, these are visceral afferents that are firing.
Right, and that's what you get referred pain.
Right. So
But when it goes
that's,
to the peritoneum,
now it's parietal.
Now
You've
it's
affected the
already-
body wall.
Which is not.
And that's actually, that parietal layer is innervated by the general somatic afferent. So that's the regular pain touch temperature that you would experience. Right? So stomach, you can see here, has essentially it's that T6 to T9 kind of dermatome area. They've got it mapped out a little bit special here with an area in the back, but essentially it's that 6 to 9. And if we, what was the last one? Was it pancreas? So pancreas, same kind of thing. It's around that 6 to 9 or so. Its distribution, not sure, was it showing on here?
It's right at the,
The blue
in front of the
center.
yellow.
Oh, yeah, so it's about the same as the stomach, when it's referred. Whoops. What else do we have? Atresias, okay. What's an atresia? This is a blockage. This is actually something that's, atresia is a block. So along the GI tract, this could be an entire obstruction blockage. Developmentally, this can happen, and when it does, it could happen anywhere along the GI tract, but it happens quite a lot in the duodenal area. I mean, that's where, if it's going to happen, that's the most prominent site for it to take place. And it could be the result of a mix-up, some misexpression of the Hox gene during development, or maybe fibroblast growth factors. Could be a vascular event during development. There's also a process during development when that entire gut tube, the endothelial tissue grows so fast, it entirely blocks the entire GI tract. And then it quickly goes through a process called recanalization, where it opens back up again. But you may have failure to recanalize, so you end up with this atresia. Or you could just have a stenosis. What's a stenosis versus atresia? That would be the narrow. And that could also be the same thing. And lastly, internal abdominal hernias. You know, this would be as opposed to an external hernia that we talked about before, such as an inguinal hernia. These would be inside the abdominal cavity. They would take place then in places where they would get tucked in behind, say, you've got these like little faucet, little pockets that are within the abdominal area. I don't think I have a good picture of that. Now, you don't have to know all these different names for these different areas here. The most prominent place, and this doesn't happen too often, but the most prominent place for an internal hernia is going to be somewhere around the duodenum. So they talk about these paraduodenal hernias. Most of those take place on the left side, but there is also a possibility on the right. But they're actually then, a portion of the GI tract gets tucked in the little pocket here. And you can see they've got an arrow here highlighting little fosses, so it would be these little pockets, or within some of the mesenteries, for instance, that we have there. These internal hernias, although they're pretty rare, they're becoming a little bit more frequent because of interventions. So you might have acquired rather than congenital kind of setup, and it would be the result of transplants going in there and actually disrupting the organization inside the GI tract, putting a hole on purpose, but putting a hole maybe through some of the mesenteries, but it's a hole where you can get structures that could actually accidentally get into that pocket. And obviously could become very serious because these, just like a volvulus, you can get this contained area being cut off with its circulation and also obstruction. So internal hernias are problematic. Okay. I think that's about it. So as far as any questions over these topics? As far as the exam setup, it's going to be with 100 points, 50 or so questions that range anywhere from 1 to 10 points in value. And there'll be some things that just fill in the blank, short answer, maybe label. There's a couple questions where we might ask you to just basically draw something real basic, or to describe it if you like. There'll be, I think, what you had like last time, there'll be some kind of, not exactly practical, but some questions, maybe 8 or 9 that are just showing you maybe an image or part of our dissections kind of thing and asking you something about it. And as far as embryology, and I think somebody asked me about that, it does say in your syllabus that you don't need to go into great depth with the embryology, but we have touched upon some here in lab and also in these PowerPoints. So those are what we're going to bring back up again potentially on the exam. Okay, so it's thorough, but nothing I don't think will absolutely say, oh, I never heard of that, or that you won't be totally surprised. I don't think. I think everything will be different.
What are some good things to learn how to draw or describe?
You have to think about that. If it's, I'm not asking you to be an artist. I mean, they would be very basic things that you would have to potentially, or you could just describe it.
Okay. Bring your colored pencils.
Now, you do have.
I'll bring my colored.
You have 2 hours for the exam. I think it's 8 to 10. The room has changed. Did they post that? It's 128.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a better room to take it in. It's just more comfortable, and you'll have a better screen, I think, for projection. And I'll have these things on a continuous loop. And some of the questions that are obviously very clinically oriented might have an image to go with it, and that'll also be projected with some of these questions that might ask, a couple of things about that patient. Here's a radiograph from that patient, so you take a look at that. So we'll have that on a continuous loop that we go through.
Okay.
MRI's fair game.
Yes, MRI, CAT scan, plain film.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.